Welcome again to our audience from around the world. My name is Alan Terletto, here on behalf of Redis Labs. Today, I have the pleasure to speak with Christopher Kalika. Christopher is the founder of Digital Receipts. He started his career in development back in the days of CGI bin. That's well before the dot-com bubble. Christopher learned, and I quote here, the art, science, and even magic of software engineering. And he did it the hard way as a proud full-stack developer. He's done everything from working at a help desk to being a CTO, so a man of the people, launched 3 startups, brews his own beer, makes his own jam. I call it the new age Renaissance man. So Chris, if I didn't embarrass you enough here, welcome, and thank you for being a part of our Redis conference. How are you doing today?
Good, thanks for having me.
All right, awesome. At this point, you've started 3 companies in your career, which is super impressive, and at least in my book makes you a serial entrepreneur, if I may. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what's inspired you to begin not one, but multiple startups?
Sure. So I would identify myself primarily as a maker. My big thing is making things. As you said, jam, beer, software. I think companies just become the extension of a product or of a solution to a problem. So I think if there's an opportunity, then why not explore it?
That's a fantastic attitude, especially for all the entrepreneurs out there. Any advice for aspiring entrepreneurs that might be in the audience right now?
Yes. Build as much as you can. Get something launched and released before you try to go get funding. The whole COVID-19 thing has actually been really interesting because there's a lot of startups that have not really had a product. They've been chasing a product, chasing a dream. And to suddenly to have all that funding dry up or all those opportunities dry up has meant a lot of them have just fallen by the wayside. So if you're actually going to build something that's going to be sustainable, make sure that you've actually got a product before you go and try to do something with it.
It's actually a great point, and you've done this multiple times. Do you feel like there's an inflection point, and I know it's always a little bit different, but where the idea really feels right to now become a business?
I think building or having the idea, I should say, is easy. But even building the product to some degree is relatively easy. The commercialization is always the hard part. The thing is, especially within the tech community, we get so gung ho, we get so excited about the latest thing, this thing I'm building, that we sometimes forget about the practicalities. That it has to be sustainable. It has to be hypothetically have some sort of business model. In order for it to continue. You don't want to just keep paying it out of your pocket. So the inflection point comes right at the beginning when you actually start to think about, is this going to be just a pet project? Is this something that I'm willing to fund for the rest of my life? Is it something I don't care about? If it becomes big, or if I actually want it to be big, then how do I go about making that a proper company, if that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Can you share from your experience any lessons learned along the way, major lessons, things that you would have loved to have known before you started on your journey?
Yeah. It's really easy for people to be supportive of you. So you ask your friends, you're like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing. And they'll totally be, oh, yeah, I think it's a great idea. The big trick here is to actually ask them to pay for it. So if you've got a product, if you've got something you are building, go try to get people to pay for it, because then they'll find all the excuses not to do it. Oh, no, I've already solved that problem with this other thing. No, I think you could do it another way, so on and so forth. It's too expensive. Yeah, learn that lesson early, and then it makes it, you'll save yourself a lot of time and a lot of heartache.
Yeah, I love it. So look for that objective, critical opinion, and also see if there's actually any way to monetize on that idea. So that's great advice. Your latest startup is called Digital Receipts. Can you tell us a little bit about its mission, how it helps its customers, and where you see it going?
Yeah, so we effectively want to bring value to receipts. I mean, we don't think about receipts. You get them, you throw them in the bin. It's not a big deal, and then you need them. Suddenly, you need them for warranty purposes, or you're trying to find what's the model of the thing you bought, or something, right? Or you need them for taxes or for expenses. Right now, we're in an interesting transition period where we still do a lot of paper-based receipts. So our focus is to actually convert those paper receipts to a digital form, whether that's through OCR and scanning, or we have a device which converts the receipts. It captures the receipts at the point of printing and actually converts them to a digital form directly. So it basically acts as a virtual printer. At the end of the day, I think it's really there's a lot of data that we just ignore at the moment that we capture. I mean, if you think about Google, for example, Google goes through your emails and it'll pull out all the data. Now, what if we could do that with real world things as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And the value of data, as we know, just continues to grow. And that's a
Always.
great way of kind of tracking people's behavior, right? Even through the receipts. Great idea there. When did you first start using Redis, and are you using digital receipts?
Yes, we are. I started using Redis probably about 10 years ago. I think.
Yeah.
The problem with actually using something like this for so long is I don't remember when I started. The first time I used it was as a replacement for Memcache. We had a PHP stack in a company I was working in, and Memcache was just not being performant enough and giving us issues. So we were like, what other options are there? Oh, look, there's this thing called Redis. Let's use that. Digital receipts, yeah, we use it for among other things, the PubSub aspect of it. So PubSub I'm a big proponent of event-driven architectures, and the PubSub capabilities underpin a lot of what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll chalk it up to you were having such a good time with Redis, you kind of lost track of time. So have you had that aha moment where you moved on beyond just we're using Redis for a cache or as a PubSub mechanism? Has there been other use cases out there?
Yeah. One of the things we use it for as well is logging effectively. It's that ability to push events into a stream, for example, and have some series or some sequence of events occur or some processing occur. So kind of like a Kafka stream. In the last session, they mentioned the use of streams in that regard, and that's kind of the use of streams in consumer groups are fantastic for that goal, that purpose.
Okay, so kind of an event sourcing pattern within if you want to apply
Yes.
that to microservices
Yes.
as well. Definitely makes sense. Your on-demand topic is going to cover the integration between Kubernetes and Redis streams. In case some of our viewers are new to Kubernetes, can you give us an overview of what it is?
Sure. It's so containers have become the standard deployment package these days. It used to be that we'd use VMs and VPSs. Now we've got containers, which allow us to deploy the same piece of software across platforms, whether it's in Google or Amazon or on your local machine or whatever it is. It's the standard package. Unfortunately, containers by themselves are just processes, so they don't deal with scheduling or orchestration or optimization. That's where Kubernetes comes in. It takes care of that across multiple machines, multiple nodes, multiple servers, and make sure that your systems and processes continue to run as expected.
Perfect. Thank you. What's been your experience with Kubernetes, and how have you used it in the past in your startups?
So I use Kubernetes as kind of for all of my infrastructure, not just my startups. It underpins a lot of my personal projects as well. I've been using it for the last 3 or 4 years. It started, I fell into it the same way a lot of people do. I was working for a company. They wanted to upgrade their infrastructure. They started looking at Kubernetes, away we went. Or they started looking at containers and then Kubernetes, away we went. I think Kubernetes offers a lot of potential with regards to cost optimization. It's a lot of it moves in that direction of treating infrastructure as cattle, not pets. So I don't have to worry about that particular server still being there. I know that there will be a server that serves its purpose.
Awesome. Without stealing too much thunder from your presentation, what problem or maybe an inefficiency are you trying to solve with Redis streams within Kubernetes?
So Kubernetes has a native jobs type. Unfortunately, it's designed more for cron jobs and that sort of thing than it is for actual queuing. So this is largely an architectural talk, but the underpinning concept behind it is to use Redis streams and the queuing capabilities, the job processing capabilities of Redis streams and the actual native Kubernetes feature, and replacing or eventually replacing that native jobs handler.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've been using Redis for almost 10 years, you mentioned. So you're very familiar with all the different kind of capabilities and data structures that are available. What made you choose Redis streams over, a list for a queue or the pub sub or even a sorted set to manage some kind of queue?
So one of the things that's nice about streams is consumer groups. It's the fact that you can have multiple different consumers or different types of consumers processing the same record, whereas a list, for example, is first come, first serve. This means you can do a lot of different things. You can actually publish an event, and almost like a pub sub. It's almost like a persistent pub sub, and that was kind of the really nice thing about it. We can publish an event and then just process it accordingly, or have multiple listeners waiting for it simultaneously, and then it still exists. That if I have a listener that has to be more asynchronous, as in it disconnects, it reconnects, and asks for an update. As you said earlier, it's more like a sourcing pattern in that regard.
Okay, awesome. Do you have any other plans on the horizon to integrate Redis and Kubernetes? Anything else you think could use improvement?
Yeah, there's some stuff we're looking at right now with replacing etcd, which is the base data store within Kubernetes, replacing it with Redis, and seeing how we can leverage some of the other features within Redis to power Kubernetes.
Awesome. Sounds like a good future talk. Have you ever had the need to run Redis on top of Kubernetes for any other use cases?
No, I mean we use it within our stuff, as in there are Redis operators which allow us to maintain a cluster of, for example, 3 nodes or whatever it is. So we do that, but no, there's nothing else that we've kind of really extended beyond the initial existing prototypes.
Gotcha. As you know, there's a ton of content out there about Kubernetes. For people that are kind of new to this, do you have any recommendations on where they should start before they so they could hit the ground running?
Yeah, so one of the things about Kubernetes is it's kind of like React or a lot of the JavaScript frameworks. A lot of things, it's evolving very quickly. So you'll have new features, and you'll also have some things that get deprecated or changed, particularly around API versions, which can be a problem. I recommend a lot of the O'Reilly stuff is pretty good. So, for example, in my talk, I reference a book called Programming Kubernetes, which focuses around custom resource development. But you've got other ones called Kubernetes Patterns, for example, or Kubernetes Operators, which was just published recently. I also really like the PACT stuff, PACKT. They've got the Mastering Kubernetes. They've got a number of other Kubernetes books. So those are really good for starting points. And then, of course, there's always the documentation.
Yeah. And definitely your on-demand talk. I think that's
of course, without a question.
Absolutely. What direction do you see Kubernetes heading into? Will it take over the world, be a flash in the pan, or something pragmatic in between those two extremes?
I think it'll be somewhere in between. I think Kubernetes will set a lot of standards. There's part of the issue at the moment is trying to get consistency with regards to the feature set of what does orchestration and scheduling look like. So all of the big cloud providers have set up their own Kubernetes instances or Kubernetes management services. I think what will end up happening is it will become the default standard. It will continue to grow, and eventually somebody's going to get frustrated with it and go, forget it, we're going to write our own or write a new one, and that'll take off.
Yeah. That's the fun side of technology, right? You got to stay on your toes. There's always someone coming.
Always.
How about Redis? Where do you see the future of Redis going?
So I think Redis will evolve more and more into a platform. I mean, it already has, but it will become especially with the expansion of Redis modules, the things like the different data types, Redis will become something upon which you build other applications. So I expect, for example, the problem that we're solving with regards to Kubernetes and Redis streams with regards to job handling may become something that natively can be done within Redis. In which case, you've now got things that could use local memory and therefore be more efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. I like it. What are the other kind of tech trends that you're maybe into now, or you kind of see on the horizon that are getting you excited?
So I really like sockets, for example, WebSockets and asynchronous processing on the web, particularly for things like APIs. I mean, we've been using REST for so long, or HTTP requests, and we've kind of GraphQL has become the latest thing. I think it's just a matter of time before we have real-time bidirectional communication with our APIs.
Absolutely. Do you see Redis streams kind of playing a role somewhere in there?
I do. I use, to be honest, a lot of the stuff that we're doing at the moment with our APIs tends to use PubSub. But yes, I think streams will definitely be a part of that.
Awesome. Awesome. And just kind of a small plug here, if anyone's interested in Redis streams and our active bilateral communication, that is something that's going to be covered in Redis Conf today, just because you brought it up, Christopher. So thanks for that.
Oh, no, it's great.
Is there any, do you follow anybody on LinkedIn or Twitter, someone kind of that gives you inspiration?
Honestly, I'm not really much of a social media person. That's just my kind of personality. I do read Slashdot on a daily basis. I'm a big fan of things like Hackaday. I think that there are a lot of maker resources out there that I think people can get into, because it's not just the curated stuff, but it's also the random. I mean, it's curated obviously, but it's the random little guy projects that just you're like, oh, that's an interesting use case.
You're probably better off. That probably gives you enough time to brew beer, make jam, and start companies. It kind of explains where you find the time. Can you give us some insight? What's the next big project? What do you have on the horizon? Any new startup coming along?
Yeah, so there's another one that's coming along. I launched it, or I set up to launch it just before COVID-19 hit. Unfortunately, it's on hold for the moment. But it's a food tech company looking at personalization of individualized meals that align to gym programs. So the idea is that if you have unique dietary requirements, or you need additional protein, or whatever the case may be, it's about how do we scale the personalization aspect using tech.
Very interesting. I think we have a follow-up session about graph. It might be a graph problem, something you might want to look into.
It might be, yeah.
So let's get to the important stuff. What can you share about your latest brew, and does it have a name?
It does. It's called Hopo 19. It is a honey porter. So I just as COVID was taking off, I ordered a set of brew kits just to make sure I had stuff to keep me going. So that's been fun. I've also made 4 or 5 different batches of jam in this time as well. So I've been trying to keep myself occupied.
Are you the kind of guy that kind of stores it for yourself, or do you put it out on the lawn and give the neighborhood a taste?
A little bit of both. I give it to a lot of friends. It's one of the things. Every time a friend comes over, they always leave a jam.
Yeah, pre-COVID, obviously.
Pre-COVID, obviously.
So transitioning to some kind of lightning questions, just some fun kind of quick Q&A.
Sure.
Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Trek. I know it's controversial, but I watch it a lot.
Star Trek, really? I saw on LinkedIn you referred to yourself as an unlikely Yoda. I thought for sure I had my money.
No, unlikely yogi. I do a lot of yoga.
Gotcha. That makes a lot more sense. Which is more fun, software engineer or CTO?
They're both fun in different ways. Engineer, you get to solve problems, you get to prototype things, whatever it is. CTO means you get to inspire people and kind of or enable people to actually build stuff. And there are a lot of people who are a great deal smarter than I am, so it's fun to be able to work with them and learn from them and enable them.
Yeah, that's awesome. If you like to solve problems and work with people, I think no matter what your role is, you can find some way to do that. So I definitely agree there. Write code or brew beer?
So code is more interesting in terms of the problems you get to solve. Brewing is fairly easy, but I have to admit the output of the beer is probably more fun for me than the output of the code.
Yeah. Enjoy the result a little more. Ale or IPA?
I'm much more of a stouts and porters kind of fan. I really, really love things like oatmeal stouts and milk stouts.
Awesome. What goes best with jam?
Blue cheese. Or very like strong cheddars.
Answer.
Well, I was thinking about this. This is something I've discussed with a lot of people. It's just because it's that whole sharp flavor and then the sweetness of the jam.
All right. Yeah, food pairing might be a future app for you.
Yeah.
Well, Christopher, thank you so much. This was a fun discussion. I hope you had fun as well, and our audience. Please be sure to catch Christopher's on-demand session. It's available now in your video library. It's called Navigating Streams with Kubernetes. I actually did have a chance to check it out this morning, and I think whether you are new to Kubernetes or are experienced and more interested into the integration point, there's going to be something there for all of you. So I definitely recommend to check it out. I think you did a great job there. So on behalf of Redis Labs, thank you all for watching, and enjoy the rest of RedisConf. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.